I just feel like I've been around the block, ripping up fantasy stock, working around the clock. Look at the view from the top. Researching rookies a lot? No, I just be listening to pods. Yeah, one in particular, I'm just a messenger. Let me just pass on the rock. Browning, brunning, pruning, pronouncing ain't what he's doing. What he's doing is not losing, but infusing you with new things. And there's Dennis the Bennett, yeah. The man is a menace, yeah. Building a dynasty, some of the finest things. Promise you, you won't regret it. Sly as a fox, cultured in pop. Give him his props. Here is a thought, here is a box, and you cannot compare them at all. So don't even try. Careful with the news, but when you use a take, I take up Tony Fire. I mean Dyer, because anyone else is a huge mistake. Whoa, fantasy round table, fantasy round table, yeah. Fantasy round table. Come take a look at the crown, baby. Hey, fantasy round table, fantasy round table, woo. Fantasy round table. Come take a look at the crown, baby. Go.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Fantasy Football Roundtable podcast. It is Wednesday and we are back on a second of back-to-back days this week, and we are talking NFC East. But before we even have a chance to get that far, there is actually some more news. Some of it, early camp news. Tua was interviewed today and said it's going to take some time for the Tyreek Hill to rebuild trust with the team after flashing the peace sign and saying he was out following week 18 last year. Meanwhile, John Lynch was asked about Brandon Ayuk and said there is no timetable for his return. Dennis, what do you make of these wide receiver bits and bops?
It's the first week of training camp for some teams, the first day. I agree with Tua. I think Tyreek showed his ass a little bit at the end of last year and was, they say winning covers up all the stink, and that's certainly true. But, man, sometimes when it's going hard, you got to buckle down. You don't just flash the peace sign. He made some stupid off-field decisions, which he's been wanting to do throughout his career. He made some, didn't quite have the season on the field that I think he wanted to have. He got a little banged up, and I think he struggled with injury. He's, 31 years old now, and maybe he's starting to realize I don't bounce back quite the way I used to. I can't I don't know that I want to be part of a rebuild. But, yeah, I think Tua is kind of trying to say, look, man, we want you here. We need you here. But you kind of, when you pieced out last year, you kind of gave us all the finger. And, you need to convince us that you're in.
Not only that, he has some off-the-field stuff going on with his, I think, soon-to-be ex-wife that's, for somebody that has a past is not ideal. You talk about he showed his ass and a little stink on him. I think there's a little stink on the whole team. I liked Mike McDaniel year one. I thought what he did was impressive, but I'm not entirely sure he's the coach in 2026 or that a lot of the players we're seeing roll out are there next year, because I don't have a good feeling about Miami. They may be the worst team in their division, which is saying something.
Yeah, it will definitely take a stellar coaching performance, I think, for him to be back next year.
Some people are starting redraft season. I actually am starting a slow redraft on Hall of Fame game night. So, we're getting closer. If you're looking at Brandon Ayuk, these reports combined with he didn't look great before he got injured last year. I'm not feeling good about him as a redraft prospect.
Yeah, he's let me go find him. See where he's
I was looking Fantasy Pros has him in PPR wide receiver 48, 111 overall. And I think we were talking about some guys yesterday that were in the 50s that I might rather take a shot on, because what if Brandon Ayuk begins the season on PUP, which is kind of the foundational comments I thought John Lynch was laying there, then he would miss 6 games. I think the 49ers passing game in general is now a little bit of a question to me, because Pearsall is also on PUP. They have conspicuously not really addressed that. Juwan Jennings, not real happy. Demarcus Robinson probably getting a suspension. This is, not shaping up to be a
Jacob Cowing pulled a hamstring or something today too.
It's going to be the 350 target George Kittle season we've all dreamed of.
Maybe. Maybe they're going to put Garendo and McCaffrey in there and run the wishbone behind Kyle Juszczyk.
Well, and if McCaffrey can stay healthy and they get that running game going, they can probably weather it. But if it's a little bit like it was last year, if McCaffrey misses time, I don't know if I feel like Garendo and Jordan James are the powerhouse. Definitely.
Well, you're relying on the scheme. Where did you say Ayuk's ADP was at right now?
In PPR, wide receiver 48, 111 overall, according to
so that's what, 10th round?
Yeah, probably. I'm looking at Pearsall. Pearsall is 44, 92 overall.
So
Jennings, let's see.
I think if I'm drafting Ayuk, I'm probably going to hold off till the 11th or 12th round. I've got my lineup. I've got 1 or 2 backups that I know I can start. If he falls to me in round 12, I might be willing, maybe round 13, I might be willing to throw him on the roster.
Jennings is going Jennings, according to this, is going wide receiver 39, 82 overall. I think that's probably a steal. He was wide receiver 24 last year. As long as he is back with the 49ers and they can get him satisfied enough to show up, it looks like people don't know what to make of the 49ers receivers, and they're drafting them in a bunch, but Jennings would be my preference, I think.
Yeah, it's I think I'm probably drafting Kittle and McCaffrey.
Well, I mean of wide receiver.
You muted.
I mean, I'm talking about with wide receivers.
Right, let me hop out and hop back in.
So the other piece of news that will lead into our discussion today of the NFC East is that Brian Daboll was cornered and asked about the Giants' starting quarterback position, and has said that Russell Wilson is their starting quarterback. So, probably not a huge surprise. This is kind of the position that they took a little while ago when they were talking about it, but obviously it looks like they're going to roll with Russ at least to start the season. I think the question becomes the progression of Jackson Dart. Do they feel comfortable with him, as their number 2, as a guy that could potentially go in? And does that free up them to move on from Jameis Winston? Does Jameis Winston stay there as the number 2? I don't think it's surprising Russ was named starter, but I think it creates some questions about what they're going to do to roll into the season.
Yeah, to me, it feels like the naming Russ and having Winston there, I think they trust DeVito to an extent, and then Jackson Dart's the future. So we could see them move off of Jameis, maybe like Cleveland did with Josh Dobbs, during training camp. I think if I'm Tennessee, maybe I want to, Jameis Winston makes more sense. If I'm New Orleans, maybe Jameis Winston makes more sense. Maybe I'm not going to just stick him in my starting lineup if I'm New Orleans, but having him there, knowing that, if it goes sideways a little bit, we've got a professional quarterback, theoretically, and we can slide him in and he's going to play reasonably competent.
Well, and you never know if, we don't glory in injuries. It is really a bummer, but it does seem like every year some kind of starting quarterback goes out in the preseason or in training camp or even week one of the season and leaves a team that thinks that they have a good enough roster to maybe make a playoff run, needing some kind of a veteran quarterback. So Giants could be in position to offer that up. Well, as I said, we are looking at the NFC East today. So we will start at the top, and that is with the Super Bowl champion Philadelphia Eagles. They finished 14-3, first place in the NFC East. They traded Kenny Pickett to the Browns this offseason. They let Kenneth Gainwell walk. They let guard Mekhi Becton walk, linebacker Oren Burks, defensive end Josh Sweat, and they released cornerback Darius Slay. They brought in quarterback Dorian Thompson-Robinson in the trade for Kenny Pickett, and they drafted Kyle McCord, so a couple of guys back there along with Tanner McKee vying for that number 2 spot behind Jalen Hurts. They brought in A.J. Dillon at running back to ensure that they are the team that have the biggest quads in the running back room in the NFL. They added Harrison Bryant and Kylan Granson at tight end. They brought in Azeez Ojulari at linebacker, drafted Jihad Campbell, and brought in cornerback Adoree Jackson. Last year, Jalen Hurts was quarterback 8, Saquon Barkley, running back 2 in his first season in Philadelphia, A.J. Brown, wide receiver 20, Devonta Smith, wide receiver 27. Both those guys missed time at points in the season, as did tight end Dallas Goedert, who finished as tight end 27. Dennis, all the big pieces are in place. They do have a new offensive coordinator as Kellen Moore left the scene, but you have to figure that Philly offense is still going to be pretty potent.
Yeah, I think it may be a little more pass heavy than last year. I mean, Saquon had close to maybe over 500 touches, including the playoffs, and that was pretty high volume. But he had 345 carries and 33 receptions, so that's almost 400, not including the playoffs. So it's a good team. They've got a very good offensive line. They were able to slide Cam Jurgens in for Jason Kelce, and he played well. They still have Lane Johnson, so they've got a nice offense. A.J. Brown, I think, he's going to be the top dog in the receiving game. Devonta Smith will probably be a wide receiver 3-4 at the end of the season. He'll have maybe a wide receiver 1 game or 2 and some wide receiver 2 games. I think they'll pass it a little more. Dallas Goedert, they did everything they could to basically get rid of him this offseason. It's like they just couldn't seem to get out from under him. He was tight end 27, but he was tight end 10 in points per game. And if everything stays the same, but they get a little higher passing volume, I don't think, De'Ami Brown, Josh Dotson is going to push for targets. I don't think Grant Calcaterra, I'm not worried about Kylan Granson or Harrison Bryant surpassing Goddard or Calcaterra. A.J. Dillon, I think, is going to be, he's a insurance guy, an afterthought. I don't expect him to really take many carries. Kenneth Gainwell had, 75 carries last year, and Will Shipley had 30. While Barkley might not get 345 this year, I would expect him to be in the 300 range if he plays all 17 games. And I think Will Shipley is primed to step up and be their new Kenneth Gainwell. But it wouldn't surprise me, though, if he ends up, instead of Gainwell's 75 carries, he's got 125 carries. Just because I don't think they're going to try to get Barkley the rushing record. He had a great year. He could have gotten it last year. He's a team first guy. I think Jalen Hurts will throw the ball a little bit more this year. And I think Devontae Smith is the primary beneficiary of that. Well, AJ Green what did he have? Where did his target numbers go?
Oh, AJ Brown, he had
excuse me.
97. He only played 13 games. They both only appeared in 13 games, 97 targets for Brown, 89 for Devonta Smith. But part of that is Hurts. He played 15 games. He only threw it 361 times. They only threw it 448 times as a team, which was actually 32nd in the NFL on pass attempts.
Yeah, if he had played 17 games at the pace he was going, he'd have been around 130 targets for Brown. It feels like probably 140, 145 target season. Devonta Smith will get up there. What he was in 13
89.
games, he was only 8 targets behind AJ Brown. I don't think he gets quite as big a bump. I think he does get a little bit. They're still going to run the ball first. They're going to be low passing volume. But I do think they're going to continue to have the narrow funnel. Like I said, I'm not expecting much from Jahan Dotson or even Grant Calcaterra unless Goddard goes down. None of the additions they made really are fantasy relevant.
Jahan Dotson started 6 games, played in all 17, was by far their best receiver a couple of weeks when they had neither Brown nor Devonta Smith, and still managed.
Somebody's got to be.
Well, he still only managed 33 targets and 19 receptions. I think the ship has sailed on one-time first-round draft pick Jahan Dotson. There's a reason Washington doesn't really have great wide receiver depth, didn't have great wide receiver depth last year, and they were happy to trade him in the division. So,
yeah. I think if I was going to take a flyer on a third wide receiver in Philadelphia, and granted, it wouldn't be a redraft flyer, it would be a dynasty flyer. It's going to be Johnny Wilson. So, I mean, he's got something different. He's 6'7". You know, he kind of reminds me of the old Eagles receiver, Harold Carmichael. And so, to me, that would be the guy that I would take a free agent flyer on, throw on my taxi squad, see where he ends up in, 2026, 2027.
Well, the number 2 team in the division actually also made the NFC Championship game, and that was the Washington Commanders. They finished 12-5. Second place, had a great playoff run. This offseason, they let wide receiver De'Ami Brown go, Olamide Zaccheaus, another wide receiver left, defensive tackle Jonathan Allen, defensive end Dante Fowler Jr., and safety Jeremy Chin. They brought in Josh Johnson as another veteran backup, but they still have Marcus Mariota, so I don't really know how that fits in. They drafted Josh Connerly, or brought in Josh Connerly. I can't remember if he was the draft pick, but he's an yeah, that's what I thought he was the draft pick. Then I questioned myself. Offensive tackle, they added veteran linebacker Von Miller, a good pass rusher who our lads lists as a defensive end. I don't know if I'm totally buying that. They brought in Deebo Samuel and wide receiver, and they added defensive tackle Eddie Goldman. Last year, Jaden Daniels was quarterback 5. He was also their leading rusher with 891 yards. Running back Brian Robinson Jr., same old 700 plus yards, running back 29. Austin Eckler, running back 34 in his first season. Terry McLaurin, who still has not reported yet, was wide receiver 7. Samuel was wide receiver 44 for the 49ers, and Zach Ertz was tight end 7. They brought back Ertz. That's a bummer for all of us that had Ben Sinnott shares and thought that maybe it was going to be his time to shine. They have Deebo, much better number 2 kind of wide receiver than what they had in the rotations last year. But it seems like this is kind of about Jaden Daniels, and hopefully they get Terry McLaurin back to me.
Yeah, they really need McLaurin. Debo's a nice player, but I think he's a wide receiver 3. And, he'll have some blow up games, but on average, I think he's a wide receiver 3. They don't have any explosiveness to speak of at the running back position. And Brian Robinson, he's kind of just a steady plotter. Austin Eckler looked slow last year. Jaden Daniels is, he led the team in rushing with almost 900 yards. And as much as we like that for fantasy, I don't think that bodes well for his long-term prospects. You don't want your quarterback getting hit, an extra 150 times. I like Daniels. I think there's an argument for him to be QB1, QB2, based on his rushing, because I don't expect it to go away. Would I like it to drop down a little bit? Yeah, sure. I mean, he rushed for almost 900. He threw for 35. If I could drop that rushing yardage down to 550 or 600, still keep him up at that 6, 7, 8 touchdown, but increase his passing yardage to like 4,100, I would like that. Get those touchdown passes up to, from 25 to 30. But, they didn't. They really didn't address explosiveness from the running back position. I know that the tendency, there'll be a desire to let Debo add that, but I think we've seen over the course of his career, if you keep letting Debo do that, he breaks. He ends up missing time. You can do it a couple times here and there. Noah Brown is their third wide receiver. I don't think he's really fantasy relevant. He plays hard. He's got good size, blocks well. We've seen him have a couple blow-up games down in Houston, but he's going into his 8th year, I think. And, I think if I remember correctly, his best finish has probably been a wide receiver 5. So I'm not really rolling the dice there for consistent production. It really comes down to McLaurin. And then with McLaurin, it's, can he maintain his touchdown production from last year? His touchdowns 7, 4, 5, 5, 4, and then 13 last year. His yardage was right in line, just under 1,100, just over 1,000 the year before, 1,200, 1,050, 1,100. So there was no great explosion. He didn't all of a sudden get 25 more receptions. He didn't get, another 250 yards. He just added 6 extra touchdowns, 7 extra touchdowns last season. And is it possible with Jaden Daniels? Daniels was 25 touchdowns, 9 interceptions last year. So if his pass attempts 480, if they go up to 550 or so, it's possible McLaurin maintains his touchdown production. But if I'm drafting him as my wide receiver 1, and he's currently going as where's he at? He's being drafted at wide receiver 19. So people are building it in.
I think my question for you is, how are you feeling about Zach Ertz? Because we thought last year was kind of the 1 year of having a veteran guy that knows Kingsbury's offense, and that's going to go to Senate. They re-signed him. He kind of found the fountain of youth. 91 targets helps, but he had very productive season with it. Hard to know how to feel about him for redraft.
If he's healthy, I think he maintains his role. I think he's a top 10 tight end. he's not a catch and run guy. He's a catch and fall down guy, but he gets open and he provides a specific skill set for that team. He's going to catch those 8-yard underneath passes and turn them into 10-yard catches. So I like the role he provides. He's a floor guy at tight end. You're not going to get, a 10-catch, 140-yard, 2-touchdown game from him, but you're going to consistently get, 5 for 55 with a touchdown every 2 or 3 games.
Well, that'll bring us to the third place team from last year, and that was the Dallas Cowboys, who after a string of 12-win seasons under Mike McCarthy slumped to a 7-10 third place finish, missed the playoffs, let go of Mike McCarthy. His contract expired. They did not get a new one done. So they moved on to their offensive coordinator, his first-time head coach. I just blanked on his name.
Brian Schottenheimer.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah, Brian Schottenheimer. I wanted to think Marty, but that's just because that's his dad. Among their losses, Cooper Rush left, went to the Baltimore Ravens. Trey Lance left, went to the Los Angeles Chargers. Fare thee well, Trey Lance. Rico Dowdle left for the Carolina Panthers. Brandon Cooks, wide receiver, left, went back to the Saints. DeMarcus Lawrence is gone, went to, I believe, the Seahawks, and Jordan Lewis, their corner, also left. They traded for Joe Milton from the Patriots to be ostensibly their backup. They brought in Javonte Williams, Miles Sanders, and drafted Jadon Blue to fill the backfield. They traded for George Pickens at wide receiver. They brought in Tyler Booker at guard, Peyton Turner at defensive end, Dante Fowler Jr. at defensive end. I believe he was with Dallas, then went to Washington and came back to Dallas. And then they brought in linebacker Jack Sanborn. Fantasy finishes, Dak Prescott was quarterback 31 last year, but missed a huge chunk of the season, only actually started 8 games. So finishing as quarterback 31 is fairly impressive. Javonte Williams, running back 30 for the Broncos last year. CeeDee Lamb, wide receiver 8. George Pickens was wide receiver 42 for the Steelers. Jalen Tolbert was wide receiver 45. And Jake Ferguson, tight end 25, probably most notable this offseason because every other day there's some kind of entertainment story about him and his fiance. So hopefully he's as good on the field as he is in the trades.
I have no idea what you're talking about. What's he doing on social media?
His fiance is some kind of social media influencer, so it's like every day there's some post about them.
Was not aware. And I'm on social media all the time.
Her name's Haley Cavender. I think she used to play basketball, but if you Google it, I don't really want to say what the latest ones are because this is a family show, but if you Google it, you'll have some fun.
Is it titties?
It's something to do in that neighborhood, but they mentioned
yesterday was Tuesday.
Every time they talk about her, they mention Jake Ferguson. And I'm just like, I remember the Cowboys back in the day had some guys that had some famous like entertainment influencer girlfriends that were always in the news, and it didn't end well for them. So,
well, we'll get back to fantasy football here.
I mean, that's a different kind of fantasy. Much football.
It certainly is. Now, I like that they added Tyler Booker. They needed to revamp their offensive line, and while they're kind of a year late getting to it, with Tyler Smith there, Tyler Booker, Tyler Guyton, they're making some progress and putting together a decent offensive line. They really didn't address running back. They brought in Javonte Williams, and could he have as good a year as Rico Dowdle? He could. I don't know if I'm counting on it, though. He's going off at running back 41 and Jadon Blue at running back 44, Miles Sanders at running back 57. And, we're hearing about how Jadon Blue is lazy. There's reports coming out of camp that he's just hasn't lived up to their expectations. as
Although,
far as being a hard worker.
Given what Jerry has said about everyone else on his team, I might take that with a grain of salt because he seems to be reveling in throwing Dak and Micah Parsons under the bus too. So
Yeah. Well, I the team revolves around CeeDee Lamb, Dak Prescott, and then I think it was Brian Schottenheimer came out yesterday or today and basically said that George Pickens' football IQ is off the charts. He can do so many amazing things. I think that him and Pickens could be up there with Chase and Higgins this year. Pickens and Lamb up there with Chase and Higgins this year, in part because they've got a better offensive line, I think, than Cincinnati, and they don't have as good a running game as Cincinnati. So it feels like Dak may lead the league in pass attempts this year by a fairly comfortable margin. After he got injured last year, the per game pass attempt numbers in Dallas went down by 10 pass attempts per game. So as much as we'd like to think, oh, well, Cooper Rush was this great backup, they went from 35 pass attempts a game to 25 pass attempts per game after Dak got hurt. So that doesn't say a whole heck of a lot. I think last year, wide receiver 8 for CeeDee Lamb was kind of low. He's being drafted at wide receiver 3. I think that's what you got to pay for him if you're going to draft him in redraft. I think if I'm talking in my league chat, I might be talking about how good I think George Pickens is going to do if I've got the 4th or 5th pick. So maybe I can get CeeDee Lamb as that wide receiver. Let him slide to me if I'm picking a little bit later. Javonte Williams he got injured he had an okay rookie year, got injured, hasn't really bounced back. Rico Dowdle was RB23 last year. I don't know that how much more I expect out of Javonte. Javonte was RB30. I'm not sure that, even if he gets 60% market share in Dallas, I don't know if that's going to be enough to get him in the top 24 running backs. It really, he's a guy that you're drafting late, not as a starter, I think, and you're hoping you can, that maybe he steps up. The guy I feel bad for, and I drafted a few shares of him early, acquired in Dynasty, kind of got him thrown in on some trades, was Jalen Tolbert. He's now going at wide receiver 92. And, he kind of looked okay at the end of last season. Brandon Cooks and Kevontae Turpin, who were the wide receivers 3 and 4 for Dallas last year, combined for 106 targets. But Tolbert as wide receiver 2, oops, I haven't moved on to Dallas here yet. Tolbert didn't hit triple digits in the target category. So let me see, what did he have here?
He had 79 targets, 49 receptions.
So I think Pickens is going to get significantly more than 79 targets. So if, CeeDee only had 152 targets in 15 games. So he may be looking at a 170 target season this year. And then I think it's going to be Pickens. You take that 80 Tolbert had, and how many are you going to take off of that Kevontae Turpin, Brandon Cooks 106 target? Probably at least half of them. So Pickens probably going to be 125, 130 targets. Well, that's not going to, even in the highest volume passing offense, that's not going to leave a lot of targets for Jalen Tolbert or Kevontae Turpin. Or Javonte Williams or Jadon Blue or Jake Ferguson. So Ferguson had 86 targets last year, so he might be able to stay flat with his target volume just because he is different than the wide receivers. So he's going to be working a different area. But yeah, I think Dak has the potential to be the QB1 this year. I'm not going to draft him like that, but it's a possibility. I've got a team with Dak and Joe Burrow. Got to say, I feel like, man, after having Christian McCaffrey on that team last year and him being injured, I feel like I might be able to make a bounce back if McCaffrey stays healthy.
Yeah, and be curious to see how their defense comes together. I think Parsons is in camp, but I don't know what Jerry Jones is doing, honestly, with the trying to antagonize some of his players, and the running back situation. We'll see how it shakes out. Miles Sanders feels like kind of an unknown. I think Javonte is going to be the guy primarily. I'm with you though. Like running back 3 is where I would have him. The reports about Blue are not encouraging, but it is hard to tell. The other thing was that coaches trying to light a fire under his backside. Can't rule that out either. The 4th place team in that division, still not very good. As the New York Giants, they were 3-14 last year. Drew Lock left and went back to Seattle. Tim Boyle left and went to Tennessee. They lost Azeez Ojulari, and Isaiah Simmons, and Adoree Jackson off of defense, which is kind of a bummer because their defense was actually not too bad last year. They brought in Russell Wilson, Jameis Winston, and drafted Jackson Dart at quarterback. So they have options. They drafted Cam Scatteraboo at running back to join Tracy back there. They brought in veteran wide receiver Will Jordan Humphrey, guard Greg Van Roten, Abdul Carter, an edge player they drafted, and they brought in Javon Holland at free safety. Last year, Russell Wilson was quarterback 24 for the Steelers. Jameis Winston was quarterback 28, playing for the Browns. Devin Singletary was running back 46. Tyrone Tracy, 5th-round rookie, was running back 26. Malik Neighbors, bona fide stud, wide receiver 6. Wan'Dale Robinson, wide receiver 36, a better season than you probably remember. Darius Slayton, wide receiver 73. He also re-upped. I want Malik Neighbors. I think he's going to be great. I don't know how to feel about quarterbacks. I think we will see at least 2, maybe 3 throughout the season. And I don't really know how to feel about this backfield either. The Giants feel like a team that are more questions than answers.
I think Tyrone Tracy is a buy. I don't want to overpay for him because I don't know that he's going to have more than another season, maybe 2. But this will be his 3rd season playing running back. He came in, he had his final season at Purdue. He switched to running back, came in last year. He played well. I like Devin Singletary as a change of pace. I like Cam Scatteraboo as a different type of change of pace. But I think Tracy, with a full season of NFL time under his belt at the running back position, I think has the potential to take a step. Having Russell Wilson, who's probably better than any of the quarterbacks he had last year, isn't going to hurt. They just re-signed Darius Slayton to a contract extension. And he had, where'd my thing go?
Yeah, it's 71 targets, 39 receptions.
Which is wild because Wan'Dale had 140 and Malik had 170.
Well, and Malik had 170 in only 15 games. I mean,
Malik Neighbors quarterback proof. And if Russell can get that, that bucket ball where he drops it in over the top, Malik Neighbors could put up some big plays that don't include him catching a 7-yard pass and running it the rest of the way. They don't have a ton of depth behind those 3 receivers. Bryce Ford Wheaton, Jalen Hyatt, Amir Smith-Marset are their next 3 up. Unless there's an injury, I expect those top 3 receivers to dominate. Wan'Dale's going to work out of the slot, short yardage area. You're hoping for volume. He's going to be one of these 7 catches for 60-yard kind of guys all season long. So you're putting him in your flex and you're letting him rack you up 10, 12, 14 points, hoping he gets you a few touchdowns. Slayton is a best ball guy. He's going to be a guy that, his job is to run deep routes, take defenders away, and Russell will take some shots at him. But I think because you got Malik Neighbors, they're going to take more shots at Neighbors than they do Darius Slayton. Theo Johnson, he's going into his second year. I think he's a serviceable tight end, him and Bellinger both, but they're not really difference makers at this point. Can Theo develop into one of those big tier tight ends where, maybe he's tight end 10, maybe he's tight end 20? That kind of feels like what his ceiling is now. We really aren't going to know long-term, dynasty-wise, how this is going to shake out other than we know Malik Neighbors is good. Until we see what Jackson Dart can do. Is he the answer long-term at quarterback? Russell's got a year or two. I feel like if the Giants are smart, they're going to let Jameis, they're going to trade him. Take a 7th-round pick, 6th-round pick if you can get a 6th-rounder. Send him off somewhere where he can be a veteran mentor to some other team. You've got Russell Wilson. Tommy DeVito, I think he's just happy to still be in the league. I think he's a guy that's not gonna make any waves in the locker room. And when you put him in the game, he's gonna play hard as heck. I think 3 years in, he's gonna know his assignment. He just doesn't have enough talent to be a difference maker. I'm gonna take some shots at Tyrone Tracy. If I'm up high enough, I'm good drafting Malik Neighbors at value. Let's see he's going at wide receiver 5, pick number 8. And to me, I'm willing to pay it. I don't see the volume going anywhere. Cam Scattaboo's only going 5 picks behind Tyrone Tracy. I don't think I want anything to do with that. I think Tracy is going to, dominate doesn't feel like the right word. It feels too strong. I think it's going to be Tracy, but I think we're going to see some Devin Singletary and some Cam Scattaboo throughout the season. But if I'm rostering a running back out of New York, Tyrone Tracy's the guy I want.
I don't know. Maybe. In Dynasty, I would rather have Cam Scattaboo.
Oh, yeah. And I think so in Dynasty. But I think where they're going now, RB35 and RB37, I think I'm comfortable with that for Dynasty. But in redraft this year, I probably want Tyrone Tracy as a top 30 running back, and I don't want Cam Scattaboo inside the top 36.
Yeah, I just didn't. Tracy had a couple of okay games, but if you look at his numbers, they're not really overly impressive. They kind of feel on par with Brian Robinson Jr. So, if that's what you're looking for, pass catching doesn't seem like it's going to be a big thing for the running backs, especially since, 310 targets combined for Neighbors and Wandale last year. Who knows how many they're going to potentially get. I think if Neighbors would have appeared in all 17 games, he might have cleared 200 targets because he was pulling them in. I really like Neighbors, but of course you have to pay up to get him. I will be curious to see, Wandale Robinson had 440, caught 93 passes, but only 699 yards and 3 touchdowns. So a lot of his value is just that PPR. Are they going to continue to pepper him? And do any of their tight ends develop a little bit more? Theo Johnson got more of a chance, at the end of his rookie year. do he or Bellinger get more of a chance to kind of pop and step up? I feel like the pressure is on Brian Dable this season, and how is that going to change their attack? At the same time, we can transition to how we feel about this division. I still don't think the Giants are going to be good. I don't think they're going to be in playoff competition. I think the Eagles and the Commanders are going to be fighting for the top spot. I think the Cowboys will make a run toward, the 8 to 10 win range, could press for a wild card. But the Giants, I don't feel good about them.
So part of my argument, for Tracy, the first 4 weeks, he had 12 carries and 6 targets in the first 4 weeks. After that, 18, 17, 6, 20, 16, 18, 9, 9, 16, 10. So I think if he had that volume those first 4 weeks, his numbers would have been, I think he would have broken 1,000 yards. He'd have definitely been over 200 carries. He needs to get in the end zone a little bit. 5 rushing touchdowns isn't great. Only had 53 targets, but he did have 1 double-digit game. I don't know that those receiving numbers with Russ, I don't think are going to go up dramatically. But I do think he has the potential to be, average 15 carries, 16 carries a game.
Yeah, I just think he was a 5th round pick who probably outperformed his draft slot, and if they believed in him, I don't know if they would have gone and gotten Cam Scatterbo where they did. I'm not. You think that his volume will increase consistently, or be more consistent at some of his peaks throughout the season? I'm less convinced of that. But he probably, if you were just going on a ceiling pick, I just don't think that I'm going to have either of them, because there are people that are locked on to them, and I'm not willing to take them that high, either of them. Because the other thing, even when Dable was in Buffalo, his running game was wildly unpredictable when we had Singletary and Moss, and trying to figure out if any of them was going to be worthwhile. How do you feel any different about the division? Are you more pro Giant than I am?
They're 3-14. I think their ceiling is probably 6 wins,
which doesn't feel like it's a good enough for Dable to be back. So
I think he'll need to make the move to Jackson Dart, and Jackson Dart perform well for about 6 weeks or 7 weeks. If he can get to week 10 at, let's say he's 3-7 at week 10, and they move Jackson Dart in and they go 3-4 to close, I think he might be able to save his bacon.
That would we'll have to see. I didn't think he was gonna survive last year, so already feels like a big victory, but we shall see. That'll do it for us today. We have one more division to do. That is the AFC East, so that ought to be an interesting, good time as well. Dennis, people have a little bit of a longer layoff this weekend because we will be back on Tuesday. What can they do?
Go to their favorite podcast platform, hit that search bar, type in the Fantasy Football Roundtable podcast, give us a like, give us a subscribe.
And for our show next week we will be transitioning to going to Thursdays instead of Fridays, which is what we're going to be doing throughout the regular season as well. We're going to do a redraft mock draft, so be on the lookout for that. Probably try to get that filled this weekend and kick it off with a little bit of a slower timer. Going to do 10 starters, 7 bench players. So give ourselves a little bit of a flavor on a 12-team league. So get you guys ready for redraft season, because the NFL actually is back next Thursday with the first preseason game, the Hall of Fame Classic there. So getting closer every day.
You got to remember to use air quotes when you say Hall of Fame Classic.
You don't expect to see a 300-yard game from Jared Goff and a 300-yard game from Justin Herbert. You don't think they're going to be out there for 4 quarters of gritty Canton football?
I'd
be surprised if we saw them for 3 snaps. Honestly.
Is we get to see some Hendon Hooker. That's what I'm looking forward to.
That's what Detroit should be doing, because they already have lost one starter for the year, which means they're not starting out with the greatest of injury luck. I don't, Hall of Fame game, I don't need to see Jahmyr Gibbs. I know he's good. I don't need to see Jared Goff. I don't want to see Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jameson Williams. Those guys, I want to see them in street clothes, having some good time, cheering for the B team. The Chargers can play all their starters, because honestly, I don't care what happens to them. But Detroit, protect your guys. But that'll do it for us today. We'll be back on Tuesday with the last of the divisions, the AFC East. So until then, you guys have a wonderful weekend.